So this Halloween, you might be seeking a very certain tale of terror from the master Stephen King. But there's one film that might be a little harder to come by. That's a 1997 adaptation of his vampire short story of The Night Flier. So The Night Flier got its publishing debut in 1988 in the primeval anthology from Stephen King, later republished in 1993 in the Nightmares and Dreamscapes collection, and this film adaptation comes to us in 1997 through fairly low-budget production media with not a lot of beefy resources to pull on, and a director who didn't have a whole lot of credits before. There's just like one short film he did before this in terms of director Mark Pavia, who also adapted the short story into a screenplay. And the 90s were such a major glut of just Stephen King adaptations getting poured out all over the market, from the absolute worst stuff you could possibly imagine getting butchered on screen to some of the best stuff you could possibly imagine, just like Misery and Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile. Just like some people just absolutely knew how to adapt King's stuff and do a remarkable job of it. Night Flier is one of those things that kind of falls a little bit in this sort of weird middle ground where it's like, it's not great, it's definitely not bad. But there's a lot of things to kind of get into about it, and the whole thing kind of came together with a bunch of European investors kind of putting some money into it and kind of developing the entire process going forward, and trying to get a theatrical release through Paramount Pictures in 1997, but apparently Paramount had a pretty full schedule ahead of them, and they really couldn't find the place in their schedule to release it in a timely manner, and so filmmakers and producers ended up going to HBO to have it premiered on their cable network, and had a very, 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 very limited theatrical release to New Line Cinema in early 1998, garnering only about $120,000 or so of box office, making it something that just really just flew right underneath the radar, just didn't get any widespread sort of exposure in certain ways. Like, okay, you probably saw a little bit on late night HBO here and there, probably rented on VHS here and there, but it's like one of those things like, okay, it didn't get a lot of wide exposure or stuff like that, or major acclaim in a certain way. It's like, got okay reviews and stuff like that. It was like, it didn't make a major splash anywhere for everyone to constantly really remember it as much more than a small cult hit. Maybe I forgot about it a little bit over the years, didn't watch it regularly, stuff like that. It never really got a reappraisal. It never got a big re-release or anything like that. No one really gave it the time and attention to really go into this thing of this entire story, which is very interesting, because you got the absolutely magnificent Miguel Ferrer in this whole thing, portraying this sleazebag tabloid reporter of Richard Dees, who actually appeared not in the film, but in the novel The Dead Zone, actually kind of trying to coach out an interview from the character of Johnny Smith there, the character who would end up being portrayed by Christopher Walken in the film. It's one of those little characters that King slipped in over there and slipped in a little bit over there, I think, in the Dark Tower stuff, just like a little something here and there. And so the whole thing is this entire tabloid reporter. He's the guy who just has no qualms, he's got no morals or anything like that. He's the guy who just goes right to the sleaze, the gore, the bloody stuff, just like the darkest stuff possible, and has absolutely no regard to anyone else. This detestable character who is portrayed with such magnetic charisma and compelling quality by Miguel Ferrer, that despite how terrible of a person this guy is, absolutely positively detestable, the guy's performance is fantastic in this whole thing. It's just so absolutely positively captivating. What he does on screen, you can't help but just be locked into what he's doing on screen with this whole film. And this whole thing where he's tracing down this entire sort of story, this sort of legend or whatnot, this myth of this guy who flies around to different airstrips here and there in this blacked out sort of plane or whatnot, and leaves all these dead bodies and all this exsanguination going on and stuff like that, and actually ends up turning out that he's hunting down an actual vampire. It's a very interesting type of stuff where it's like plays off a little bit of this reflection of like Dees is sort of this sort of proverbial bloodsucker. He just kind of goes for the blood and the gore and all this type of stuff and just like splatters it all over the pages of the newspaper and everything like that, hunting down this actual living bloodsucker in a certain way. Very interesting type of stuff, how they kind of work off of that here and there. But there's a lot of things with the film that do kind of show off as sort of low budget sort of resources and stuff like that, where it's like a lot of places the cinematography is really fantastic when you get into like the more moody nighttime type of stuff, but other places it's a little bit more kind of standard generic type of stuff, and the score is a little cheap here and there, and the supporting characters are played by actors with not the most depth to their filmographies and their experience or whatnot, but it's like there's a lot of things in the film for our side that do hit off, especially in the last 25 minutes of the film, where you really get into the thick of the meat of the entire story. It really excels so much with the suspense, the atmosphere, the quality of the cinematography really shines out so well. All these different things really kind of come off to a good light as a good quality arc for the character that probably plays a lot stronger in the King original story instead of this adaptation that is, again, restricted by certain limitations of time and resources and money they had to work with. But it's one of those things like Stephen King adaptations, even the worst goddamn shit. Stuff like Langoliers, and I thought Dreamcatcher was actually fucking awful. That thing got a theatrical release, stuff like that. So it's like, between even some of the worst stuff that was on television, and some of the worst stuff that was in theaters, this thing's still something that is a lot better than some of those really just awful type of adaptations. This thing holds fairly close to the original story while making a few additions to kind of make sure they could fill out the full runtime of 90 minutes to make sure there was a substantial enough story to hold that sort of runtime and whatnot. And it kind of works. It does work in a lot of different places. Again, Ferrer is magnificent, the whole thing, but this thing is so scarce to come by because HBO ended up handling the home video rights, put it on VHS, put it on DVD, and it's just like so hard to find the film. As I talk about it so much on this series already, that's what we're here for the retro video series, stuff that is difficult to come by, that's rare to find. And HBO is somehow very stingy with these weird home video rights to these certain types of films, like The Hitcher, which they've had the rights for eons. It hasn't gotten any decent quality release in the US. In Europe or whatnot, in the UK, they got a nice special edition DVD. Over in Germany, they've got a nice Blu-ray release from a theatrical print scan. None of that's come to light here from HBO in the US, and despite the fact they're owned by Warner Brothers, and they have vast resources at their disposal, and probably could put these out in a very quick type of fashion through Warner Archive and do a fantastic job of it. But a Stephen King adaptation that does have a strong cult following. There are people who really fucking like this film exceptionally well. Ferrer's performance, again, on its own, is worth seeing the film for. Can't find this thing on streaming. It's not on HBO Max or anything like that. No VOD, no real available DVD release in the US. Probably still find the UK one, but that's Region 2 is PAL and everything like that, so it'd be very difficult to play it on US players, stuff like that. It'd be a lot of incompatibilities. And so I was like, it's one of those things like, okay, why wouldn't a Stephen King adaptation that's even just kind of middle of the road or whatnot? It's like it has some really good stuff, some stuff that's kind of not all that's exceptional, but something that's a Stephen King adaptation, one of the biggest names in horror that's easily marketable. One of the most easily marketable names in all of horror is Stephen King. You could easily put this out and make some nice money off of it and please the fans, and you're just like, okay, you don't do shit with it. We've gotten some other DVD releases over in UK or whatnot, where Warner Bros. Put it out on DVD in the UK with a slightly extended, unrated cut, basically called the director's cut. Just has a little extra gore, a little graphic stuff added back into it. Nothing major on a storytelling level, but they did give a little something extra there. But it's like it just got put out originally on DVD here, probably like 20 years ago, and they just forgot about it, which is just strange to me. I don't understand why these things keep happening, where you have a big studio with a lot of resources, could easily do whatever they want with that property, that title, whatnot, put it out on a nice type of thing, have it remastered and stuff like that. Even with owning their own, again, HBO Max streaming service, could put it right on there with a very good quality transfer and just do it there. There's no interest. There's just for some reason, I don't know if there's just some weird type of things beyond just having them the rights, and there's other complications to that, why stuff that was released under HBO Home Video or stuff like that just gets a little bit lost in the mix in this type of stuff. Again, the direct comparison I give is The Hitcher, which is kind of like in the same home video limbo of sorts here in the US, where no one can really kind of free up the rights and figure out exactly where things land and get things figured out. And apparently sometime in the 2000s, Mark Poffy and Stephen King were attempting to get a sequel made called Fear of Flying that would actually explore both the origins of the Night Flyer and follow the character of Flier, who was added into the adaptation for the film to be the sort of young, plucky reporter kind of trying to climb herself up the sort of tabloid sort of ladder or whatnot, and have a little bit of an arc there in the whole first film and whatnot, and have her be the one that would follow in the sequel, but trying to garner the multi-million-dollar budget for this whole thing based on a first film that didn't do much money at all really meant it just dissolved and nothing came of it. Stephen King never took any of those ideas and put them into a short story or anything like that. But the Night Flyer's kind of shown up in a couple little stories here and there and whatnot, and kind of alluded to somewhere else, but never had his own dedicated follow-up story for the whole thing and whatnot. But it's the entire thing where the Night Flyer itself, that film, has a lot of really good stuff to go for it. All the stuff, especially when you get up to the end of the film where everything comes to a climax, you pay off all the sleazy, skeezy type of stuff that Richard Dees has been doing to people, and his mentality and just having no empathy for anyone, stuff like that. And you get up to the whole thing with the actual Night Flyer himself, who's called Dwight Renfield, based off the original actor who played the character of Renfield in one of the Dracula adaptations. One of these interesting things where you just get all this really good confrontation. Wonderful, eerie, creepy type of stuff. Works off so well, and just have him delve into just this horror of all the stuff that Dees has kind of soaked himself into, all the horrific type of shit that he's kind of spent his life documenting and delving into, and just having no regard for anyone's sort of humanity or anything like that. So it's like it pays off very well. It's just one of those things like, you got to have this film out there somewhere. I mean, you just can't just let the Stephen King adaptation just disappear or whatnot. It's like it's Stephen fucking King. If this guy doesn't have a little bit of pull to really kind of poke at something, saying like, why not this film get back out? Why aren't we recirculating this film back out to people? Because King thought pretty much well of it at the time. There's one of these little sort of lectures or seminars or something like that he was doing at the time, and he really praised the film in a very good type of way. So he thought fairly well of it at the time, and so it's one of those things as it falls away and disappears and stuff like that. It's like, man, even if they did like a remake, certainly you could improve some of the more underlying qualities with the production values and some of the supporting characters and stuff like that. But Ferrar's performance is so goddamn good, and KMB Effects actually did the makeup effects for the whole film, making this terrifying looking vampire so much unlike anything you would have seen before this. So like they really did something special to make it very unique in a certain way. So it's like if someone came along and wanted to re-adapt it and stuff like that, it would still lose something. It still wouldn't have the really goddamn fantastic strengths you had the first time. Not saying there aren't fantastic actors who could do something really good with the Dees character, but Ferrar's performance should not be forgotten this whole thing, because it's definitely one of his best. And it should not be forgotten in any type of way. So it's like the Night Flyer. If you've not seen this film, find a way to track it down somehow, some way. It does have some things that really do pay off. After you got a lot of stuff that does feel a little bit lacking in certain places here and there, but the ending of the film really is worth waiting around for. So guys, just let me know about this whole film. Just like, again, it's one of those things that like is scarce to come by. You might find a DVD somewhere, whatnot, on Amazon, but it's probably a little bit of work to find it, and Lord knows, with all the different regions and the codings and the PAL versus NTSC, still makes it difficult to come by. The director, Mark Poffy, didn't end up doing a whole lot after this. It was almost like 20 years before he has another IMDb credit to his name, but he seems to be trying to do a couple of new things here and there as a director and filmmaker, stuff like that, so good on him for coming back around and trying his hand again. In light of all the horrible, just cringe-inducing Stephen King adaptations we've gotten over the years that are easily findable. You can easily get them on DVDs and stuff like that here and there. It's like, it's not hard to find a lot of these things. And just have a bad time of watching it. It's not a bad time watching The Night Flyer at all. It's like the Night Flyer, Stephen King type of stuff. when you watch a lot of the bad films, this one is nice. This one's really nice. Doesn't hit the upper echelon of your Pet Cemeteries and your Shawshanks and all these wonderful different things that came out from the genesis of the imagination of Stephen King, but it's still worthwhile. So worth checking out if you can find it. And that's the big problem. And that's why I'm here for Retro Video Series. They're shining a little bit of light on stuff that really should get a little bit more attention and a little bit more of a revival on home video, stuff like that. So guys, let me know if you had the opportunity to see this at some point in time. Saw it way back on HBO, VHS, DVD, or whatnot. Definitely let me know. And for all the people who not had the opportunity to, definitely let them know how good and how much you might recommend it, or whatever the case is. Whatever you feel about it, let me know, because I hope you do well. So guys, happy Halloween. Take care. Bye-bye.